Hello and welcome. For the China Negotiator, I'm Andrew Hupert. So, you're a strategic competitor. Episode 8. It's about time. The takeaway for today's talk. If you're an American, time is not on your side. This could be a very long, protracted trade dispute with no clear signs of progress or even direction. China is built on patience. Americans hate to wait. Next, there's a stakeholder mismatch that's also working against you. Domestic audiences on both sides think that they're winning. America thinks we're winning this. Chinese think they're winning this. The principals are not speaking, and there are no plans in place for them to have another meeting as of the time of this conversation. This leaves international negotiators like you kind of stuck in limbo, and that's not a good place to be. The only thing worse than a bad deal is no deal. Uncertainty is a business killer, and this is what we've got right now if you're still involved in China. And you have to assume the worst, and the worst is that it continues just like this directionless, unprofitable fog for a long time. So in today's talk, it's about time. Americans have to manage their bias for action. Chinese are really patient. Domestic stakeholders are the main audience on both sides of this. So Americans, control your bias for action. Americans are always kind of proud that we do have this bias for action. We're doers, and we like to see ourselves as serious players who get things done. That's what successful people from the United States do. When I'm negotiating, I want to reach an agreement, I want to reach a plan for execution, and I want to implement this into a new business on a tight schedule. Action is part of our cultural DNA. The U.S. scores extremely high on the indulgence versus restraint scale. There's the United States with a 68. Work hard, play hard. That's what we're about. Get right down to it. Patience is not respected as a virtue in the world of business. For Americans who have a bias for action, who want to do something, who want to know what to do, the China exit is the only sure, clear course of action available to you. What's not so clear is, will you be able to come back for China 2.0? Will that be off limits to those of us who have decided to exit? Let's look at the China side of this. China is built for patience. We talked about power distance last time. We talked about individualism. And I believe we talked about uncertainty avoidance a little bit. And we talked about long-term orientation. Good Lord, we were busy. Today, I want to talk about indulgence. And the scale measures indulgence versus restraint. And China is low at 24. So here's what Hofstede has to say about that on the site. China is a restrained society, as can be seen in its low score of 24 in this dimension. Societies with a low score in this dimension have a tendency to cynicism and pessimism. That is so China. But they also are willing and able to forego or sacrifice short-term rewards in favor of long-term gains. This is what Americans read or heard about the upcoming trade war about a year ago from Donald Trump's official Twitter feed. Trade wars are good and easy to win. Example, when we are down $100 billion with a certain country and they get cute, don't trade anymore. We win big. It's easy. So there you see the high indulgence score predicts a bias for action. Now, I can practically hear some of you saying, yeah, that sounds pretty bleak, Andrew, but won't the costs and the inconveniences of a trade war surface pretty quickly and force stakeholders to change their attitudes? Well, not necessarily, and that's why we have to do this reality check that we're doing today. Key stakeholders are being insulated. Well, they're being insulated in the United States, and they're being mobilized in China. So they're not really feeling the pain. In the United States, they are still being told that China is paying for the tariffs. and this is a big moneymaker for the United States. I know Donald Trump started saying that, but now other very truthful-sounding types are starting to say something similar. And farmers in some states have been bailed out preemptively. So a lot of domestic stakeholders are not really feeling pain or are swept up in the fervor of a righteous war on both sides. And finally, a little bit of a negotiating nerd observation. This team in Washington, they are not closers. They have not really locked down any of the big deals they have started. And I'm talking about the big deals that grabbed big headlines for days at a time and had cliffhanger endings that just didn't go anywhere. So North Korea is the one I'm thinking of. There's been no follow-up to that dramatic second meeting where we walked away from someone who many still consider an adversary. The wall sort of reached a non-conclusion. Healthcare was one of those big knockdown, drag-out, ultimatum-y type fights, and we're nowhere on that. NAFTA, TPP, there have been a lot of other big proposals, but what concerns me is that for every big proposal, there are a series of climb downs, like with the 90-day delay of the Huawei ban. Although it diffuses the negative potential of the situation, it also takes the pressure off wrapping these things up and moving on. Final word, American negotiators have to get better at managing time. I say that not just in this particular instance, but in general, but especially in this instance, because the fundamentals of time management are working against you. The Chinese are more patient than you are. We do not have momentum on our side, and your bias for action is probably leading you to walk away from China. Reassess your BATNA and fallback plans to make sure you have a China exit plan. You want to make sure that your China exit goes well and legally, and you want to preserve the right and the reasonability of coming back to China at some point in the future. And for God's sakes, stop waiting for logic, reason, or common sense to save you. Just grow up already. It's not going to happen. Good talk. Thanks for watching. I will speak to you again soon.